What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the Triple H podcast, Happy Hour Hoops. It's Steve, it's Jake, it's myself, Dunny, and today we have the Southwest Division, more previews. That just means we're that much closer to the NBA season. Guys, I'm hyped. I think it really hit me. Oddly enough, it hit me during the first Sunday of football. The 1 o'clock game started kind of slow, and I would be lying if I said I wasn't sitting there thinking a little bit about the NBA and how that is, you know, super close. And I think I wasn't realizing that mentally. Some slow football was able to put that in my brain, and I'm excited. How we feeling today, boys?
I'm feeling good. I mean, similar to you, Donnie, right? I talked about last week, the fall sports season. This is when it starts. And it kind of, it hit me a little bit, but it hit me today, Donnie, because today is the start of the WNBA playoffs where the Aces playing little Chicago. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to sit down, watch some good WNBA basketball and have that carry over into the start of the NBA season. Because this is really, for me, like, all right, these are the games that, start to matter, and then we're going to get right into the NBA. And I'm not going to lie, too. Like, just last week, the Atlantic, like I said, kind of straightforward. We kind of knew, for the most part, what the teams are going. I'll tell you what, guys, and this might be a little Mavs bias coming here, but I am so excited for the Southwest this year. This is really just going through the division this week, looking through the teams, looking through the moves. This is where I was like, oh, I can't wait to have my heart ripped out when Dwight Powell plays 30 minutes a night. I cannot wait for some Southwest basketball.
Well, you're gonna have it, and we have a whole show talking about it, so that's gonna be awesome. And yeah, Jake, where are you at? How much do you love the Southwest? As much as Steve? You hype for basketball?
Whoa! I can't be possibly match Stevie Southwest. All right, I can't possibly get those levels. But yeah, I was same thing as you, Steve. But I was finally digging in last night, looking at all the moves, looking at the rosters and everything. This might be my league pass division this year. With the Thunder, the amount of Thunder I'm gonna watch is gonna be sickening. For one thing, it's just gonna be
Thunder's Northwest
City. No, I'm sorry, not the Thunder. The Spurs. I'm thinking.
I know what
you're thinking of the Spurs. The Thunder, my darling, last year. That's where I'm trying to get to. I had my darling of last year. My darling this year is going to be the Spurs, just as much as everything else. It's going to be sickening how much I watch of the Spurs, almost as much maybe as the Thunder last year. The Rockets, the moves that they're going to be able to, just what we're going to be able to see from them with their young players and everything else. The Mavs, the melodrama that we are going to possibly see. I think no matter what, it's going to be interesting there, but there's a lot of combustible elements within that division. There's just a lot of interesting things. And when I even brought up Zion Williamson, who remains one of the most interesting people in the NBA. So a lot of talk around there.
Yeah, well, we're going to dive right into that soon, but let's start how we always do. Some news and notes. There's some good, there's some bad. There's some ugly actually in the news today too. We'll start with the bad, or we'll start with the ugly actually. Kevin Porter Jr. has been released. I don't know the correct terminology there, but he is no longer a Houston Rocket. He was charged with assault and domestic charges against his alleged girlfriend, and the Rockets. I think they even released him before before he was actually charged, just probably to avoid any drama there. But yeah, Kevin Porter Jr. no longer on the Rockets. We're going to have that full breakdown because we were talking about the Rockets today, so we can, see what the roster looks like without KPJ. I would probably guess that he doesn't see another roster for the rest of his life in the NBA.
Yeah. Good riddance, right?
Yeah.
See you never. And honestly, the Rockets, very exciting team, though. This is a very exciting team. We wanted to bring this up so then we don't have to say it when we talk about the Rockets because there's a lot of exciting young players and get Kevin Porter Jr. out of the league.
And Jake mentioned it, before we hopped on here. He already had his first strike in Cleveland. This strike is, could have been a one and done regardless. No room for a guy like KPJ in the league, unfortunately. So got the ugly news out of the way. Next piece of news here is a new rule that was brought up last week, not by us, but by other media outlets. And we actually talked about it amongst ourselves in our group chat. And we are very much in favor for this rule. I think most NBA fans are going to be in favor for this rule. I think probably fans and owners are going to love this rule. And I think players and coaches might hate this rule. But there's a new rule approved today that you cannot rest two stars in the same game. A star constitutes as someone who has made an all-star or an all-NBA team in the past 3 seasons. And yeah, this is basically just to avoid teams tanking. It's basically the best. If you're unfamiliar with this, the best situation to point to is Kawhi Leonard and Paul George with the Los Angeles Clippers. I mean, Kawhi has done it on multiple teams now, but though that duo is definitely the most guilty of this type of thing. And I think Kawhi Leonard is usually a name that people point to when you're talking about load management, resting, sitting out of games, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I mean, we're all in favor for this rule.
Yeah, all in favor. I mean, we're fans, right? We want to see the stars play more. That's our thing as fans. I have 2 things on this. The first one is because I didn't see it, but do we know like what they consider resting? Because I could see a workaround here, right, where the star starts the game, plays a few minutes, and then he's never seen again. We've seen that, kind of before, like in an all-star game, right? Like where Giannis will have played for a minute and then he sat out the rest of the game. Like seeing that in a regular season sense would kind of defeat the purpose. So that's a little concern. But overall, I like the rule. And my second thing, too, is I was surprised. I think over half the teams in the league fit this criteria where they have 2, quote unquote, what you call stars for the All-Star, All-NBA. So it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, I think we're going to get a lot more competitive basketball in the regular season, too, which is really nice because we'll see these games that maybe they're like, we don't want to play both of our stars up back to back. You're going to have to choose one of them. And we'll probably see these teams that have the 2 quote unquote stars stagger it a little bit. But my biggest thing with it is like, what are they considering rest, right? If they don't play the entire game, that's rest. But it's like, can teams work around that where their star plays like 5 minutes? That's where I'm a little concerned.
Jake, what are your initial thoughts here?
Yeah, there's got to be something like a minute minimum, or I don't know. You can't get a DMP. You can't have him play 1 minute though and be like a thing.
Right.
I mean, I don't know if this is gonna work, but it's a positive. It's a positive step. I think teams are gonna get really creative with their injuries and injury designations and what they consider injuries, and it's just gonna be a push and pull. But they had to do something, right? And had different conversations, group chats, friends, everything today. And it's like, attendance is all that was record setting last year. Everything else, like people worried about, well, what if, we have to play one of our stars in game 80 for no reason. And then he gets hurt because of this rule or whatever else. Mm-hmm. So there's legitimate concerns of like competitive balance, I guess. But when it comes to 2 sides, a business standpoint, I don't care if you're on top right now. You can't be complacent if you're the NBA, and it's terrible PR. Like the kid that flew from Brazil to see Jimmy Butler and he gets scratched late because he doesn't want to play. Like those things cannot happen when you're trying to grow an international fan base and people are spending, hundreds of dollars and planning months ahead to go to these games. You have to return on that investment. So yes, right now, people are shelling out money and attending games and doing all this. But usually when consumers start like losing trust in what they're doing, the results don't show up right away. It's like a trailing thing. So the NBA needs to be ahead of this rather than behind it and trying to chase it. I think this is a way to try to get ahead of it. Second point, the TV networks are definitely the ones pushing for this more than anything. Attendance is fine. If teams are happy with attendance, that's one thing. But who's not fucking happy about Jimmy Butler sitting that game is TNT when they have him on a Thursday night, or ESPN. And there is a rights negotiation coming up in about next year, 2 years. They're actively negotiating with ESPN, Turner, NBC, Fox. So they need to. This is kind of like a bargaining chip for them in this regard. Like, hey, we're trying to get these stars to play games. Like, we want this. This is a billions of dollars on the table for them. So I understand them trying to do something, but I still think the players are going to try to find their ways around it too. And so there's going to be some drama with it during the year for sure.
Yeah, two things that came to mind initially for me. One is I think more players are on board with this than the league likes to let on because, I'm exposed to the Celtics a lot more than most just because I'm a fan of them. But Jason Tatum actually has a really cool and always has had this as far as I've followed him or as long as I've followed him, he's had this view. But he has a pretty cool perspective about, not load managing, not resting. And it's for the same reason I think Kobe used to talk about it. Like, and Jake, you just mentioned it. Like, people fly all over the country to come see NBA players now, or they save up all year to see one game. And if they go to that game and Jason Tatum, for example, isn't playing, that sucks. So he's at a camp or he's talking to a high school team or something, but he's, basically telling these kids who are the next generation, like, if you're available to play, you should be playing. And I think a lot of players in the NBA share that. So hopefully this new rule, along with guys who maybe silently shared those thoughts, it will get the ball rolling on this thing and we'll see less of the load management, less of the useless resting. The other thing is, as far as TV ratings this is good for, it can also be beneficial in the gambling space too, because how many, obviously not everyone gambles on the NBA, but the three of us do, and there's a whole world of bettors out there. And this is, something that gambling sites and whoever can get rid of a lot of the stuff that's not clear before game starting, because you have a guy in Kawhi Leonard or Jimmy Butler, like you said, who is completely healthy on the back-to-back the night before, but then sits because, they have a tough road trip coming up. Line moves, people already invested their money throughout the week. They lose it, whatever. It's gambling's already a slippery slope, and then you add in things like this. So I think it can be beneficial in a lot of different ways. I'm sure there are coaches and players who are not going to like this rule. And I'm with you, Steve. I think there's going to be – I think the rule book on this rule is going to need to be pretty lengthy for it to actually serve its purpose. But we'll see. I think it's a step in the right direction. I think it's something that probably needed to be done, or at least needed to be addressed. And the league doing this, I think it's good. I think it's good for the league. Next piece of news here, Team USA. This was the bad part of the news. We had the ugly, we had the good. This is the bad. Team USA loses to Canada. They couldn't even get a bronze medal, but LeBron spoke out. He said he wants to play for Team USA in 2024. Could we have a new age dream team next year? And the only other thought I want to leave you guys with before you respond to this, or what your guys' thoughts on it are, imagine a world where LeBron James and the Lakers win the championship this year, and then he plays in FIBA and then gets a gold medal for Team USA, or even just like is absolutely dominant for Team USA. That might be where the Jordan LeBron conversation is at its tightest, and he has the Jordan fans up against the ropes. But that was just my first thought when I saw his quote on this. But I mean, obviously Team USA is super disappointing. This is a cool idea if all the older guys just come together and play one last time. What do you guys think?
I think it would be a cool thing to see. I think this is kind of maybe not necessarily a wake-up call, but just kind of showing that, maybe the U.S. should try to put its best product out there for basketball in these world competitions. And I'm not saying it was a bad team. There are a lot of good players on this team. This team probably could have won. But we had a lot of guys that weren't playing that are superstars that missed out of this team. You talk about LeBron, Kevin Durant's another one that wasn't playing for it, right? Steph Curry, guys like that. It's like we didn't put forth our best product, and maybe not even getting a bronze medal tell the guys, hey, like maybe we should play. And I think, Dunny, to your point, if LeBron is the one who's the leading force for this, one thing I will always credit LeBron, he's very influential. If LeBron wants to do something, everyone else is going to follow suit. So if LeBron is like, hey, I want to do this, I want to buy in for like a dream team type scenario, I think that would be great. And I think it would get a lot more people caring about this for USA basketball than most people normally do. Because I'll be honest with you, obviously, but the time the games were played made it tough too. But this was nowhere near as much in the media or as talked about as it would have been if LeBron was on the team or if Kevin Durant was on the team, guys like that. It just kind of flew under the radar. You know, obviously the basketball fans cared about it. But other than that, it just didn't really matter. And I think that's an issue when, you know, this is a world-type tournament. LeBron joins the team, I think they would fall like dominoes. I really do. If LeBron's the first one to go, I think everyone else follows suit.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Jake?
Steve said it perfectly well. I mean, LeBron seemed like he just dialed everybody up on his cell there. Like, just was like, hey, we're locking in next year, and everybody followed in. I mean, it's pretty tough. I don't care. That roster should have won the gold medal, like far and away. And so something went wrong there. A lot of Steve Kerr discussion happening. I think that's pretty fair. 5 guards in the overtime period against Canada, a team that didn't rebound all tournament. There, you know, whether it's a flawed roster or not getting the guys to buy in fully, there was some kind of disconnect that I haven't seen in a lot of even bad FIBA years. It wasn't like this. So maybe it's going to be a player driven thing, and that'll be it. Or maybe Pop's got to come back out. He's just like, you know what, Steve, I left too soon. gotta come back for the Olympics. Come take it back over. I don't know, but it's definitely discouraging to see. But we know the talent's there. We just need to get them all aligned to get them going.
Yeah, and I think there's even two things. I think it's hilarious that Trae Young is probably somewhere just rubbing his hands together, loving that Team USA missed the 3rd place mark because he thought he should have
rebounding.
True. That's true. He wouldn't have done that. But I know he's out there being petty somewhere, and he thinks that he could have made an impact regardless of if that's true or not. The other thing, yes, LeBron. I mean, if LeBron does play FIBA next year, that'll be awesome. Same with KD, same with Steph. I also think there's a group of U.S. basketball players between, you know, the ages of those guys and the guys on the team that even would have been a step up. Like guys like Tatum, and Jaylen Brown, who have both been on Team USA before, but, you know, didn't play this year. Like I think obviously the fans want guys like LeBron and KD to be out there, but I even think just like if a few other guys had stepped up, and I'm with you, Jake, I think this roster should have won regardless, but I do think there's, you know, if people are going to finger point, I think there's more so to point at than just guys like LeBron. I mean, 38-year-old LeBron might have a better excuse than anyone to not play, but I get it. And if he says he's going to, that'd be awesome. But yeah, we'll see with Team USA. It was super disappointing. You mentioned it, Jake. Something just seemed off. Like watching those games, it was like, okay, yeah, like you're in a tight game with Germany, and why is that again? Like right. you guys constantly cook Dennis Schroeder when you play him in the States, but now you can't keep up with him in a FIBA game when you have the best of the best in your starting lineup. Obviously, we know it's not actually the best of the best, but it's still an all-star studded roster up and down with one of the considered to be best coaches in the league. So, yeah, something's not right there. Maybe Coach K will make a return as LeBron does to Team USA, and things will get right. But for the time being, we wait. Someone who's not eligible for Team USA had some interesting comments right before we hopped on the pod here. NBA on TNT released a quote from Giannis before or from today, I believe, on somebody's podcast. Sorry, I'm not crediting them. I didn't get it when I took down the quote, but Giannis on his future with Milwaukee says, if there is a better situation for me to win the Larry O'Brien, then I have to take that situation. He said before that, I am in Milwaukee right now, but I am also a winner. And then followed it up with what I just said. If there's a better situation for me to win that Larry O'Brien, then I have to take that situation. Where are you guys at with Giannis? I mean, he kind of made comments like this a month or so back. And even last offseason, going into last year, he made some weird comments about where he didn't know where he would end up. I think Chicago and New York Knicks fans all thought, they might have a shot at Giannis. The Knicks think they have a shot at everyone, so that's not a surprise. But where are we with Giannis? Do we think he's in Milwaukee come 2025?
Yeah, I do. I do. I'm like with Giannis's comments. It's one thing. I just don't. He doesn't seem like that guy where he's actually. This is more of I think him telling Milwaukee like get some players with me. I don't think Giannis actively wants to leave Milwaukee, but I think he's getting tired of the whole same deal where Chris Middleton, who's been not healthy and inconsistent. Drew's all right, but he's getting older, and then you got Lopez, and it's like you need a little something else. Milwaukee's bench really hurt them this season, and I think it's just Giannis basically telling the Bucks like, listen, like I've been loyal to you my whole career, but if it doesn't change, I will explore other options. But I also think too, like I don't think Giannis is actively trying to leave Milwaukee. I think this is just the classic superstar put some words out there like, hey, just to let you know. Like I'm not locked in. Like I want to be here. I want to play here. But if there's a better opportunity and you're not going to do anything about it, because here's the deal, right? If there's a team that wants Giannis and maybe it's a better opportunity and he kind of like considers it, Milwaukee's going to do everything in their power to keep him there. So I think that's all the comments are for.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Jake?
I think that is what the comments are for. I think everything you're saying about the roster is right, and that's why I think that it's way more serious than that. He is he's up for an extension next summer. So if he does not sign that extension, then you have to trade him. That's basically where we're at in NBA circles at this point. And I don't know if they have any avenues to get the team better. Like they need to improve it, but they traded all those picks for Drew Holiday. Like this is really the team, and this, depending on how it goes this year, I still think I'm still very high. You guys know how high I am on this team this year. It's mostly because of Giannis, but I mean, there's 100% a world where it doesn't go as well this year. That extension's on the table. They don't have an avenue to get better, and he's like, hey, and he's doing. And I don't think he's at that point right now, like you're saying, Steve. But he's definitely putting the pressure on, and he is very calculated. That man. He's not saying that, and he says what he means too. So I mean, they need to consider that. And you mentioned the Knicks, you mentioned the Bulls. I'm sure the Lakers would somehow try to throw their hat into theirs, whatever way they could. There's every team that can possibly try to trade for Giannis would. But yeah, I think the pressure's on Milwaukee because it's an aging roster, and he's got an extension due at the end of the year, so he really holds all the leverage at this point. So it's gonna be interesting. Winning cures all, though.
Yes, it sure does. I'm really torn. I think I tend to have some of the same thoughts as Steve, where he is kind of just nudging the organization to get a better roster. But I'm with you, Jake. Like the organization also is kind of in between a rock and a hard place with this roster because they made some monumental moves, and they're not the Los Angeles Lakers who can go out and make these big roster changes, trade all their youth, trade all their picks, and get a guy that helps them win the championship like both franchises did. The only thing is Los Angeles can recruit whenever they want. Any big free agent is going to take a look at the Los Angeles Lakers. That doesn't happen with Milwaukee. Why is this? Was Milwaukee able to get a championship with Giannis? Because they drafted him, and he was a homegrown talent. Guys like Giannis Antetokounmpo don't just walk into Milwaukee in free agency.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because when his contract is up at the end of the 2025-2026 season, he's an unrestricted free agent too. So I don't know. It's interesting. I think I wouldn't be surprised if, say, he doesn't sign a deal when he's eligible for an extension. I wouldn't be surprised if the Milwaukee Bucks trade away a 31-year-old Giannis just because of what I started this with. They know they're not going to get any big name free agents. You know, maybe down the road they're able to transform this organization, and years from now Milwaukee's a free agent destination, but it's not right now, and I don't think it's going to be in the next couple of years. So I wouldn't be surprised if Giannis grows frustrated, they don't win another championship. You know, both sides can agree, we're going to trade you, we're going to get everything we possibly can before we get nothing for you. You go to maybe a preferred destination, maybe that, you know, they have a list of teams that he wants to go to. They get a haul in return, and Giannis tries to win his Larry O'Brien elsewhere. It's definitely, you know, if you're the organization or if you're a fan of the Bucks, it's probably not the best thing you want to hear. I think as for this season, it's probably not much. Giannis doesn't strike me as a guy who, you know, maybe he has these feelings. I'm sure he's saying honestly what's on his mind, but I don't think that's going to hold him back from putting 110% on the court like he always does and trying to win a championship this season. So I think if you're a Bucks fan, you know, worry if you think you're going to have Giannis for the next 8 years, because that might not be realistic. But I wouldn't worry about this upcoming season. I would, if anything, I'd be excited. You're still going to be one of the top 4 teams in the league, or projected to be. So interesting, though, that like this is the third time since Giannis has been under contract where he's at least like hinting at the idea of going elsewhere. It's definitely should make you feel a little strange. But as far as next season, I'm not buying into it all that much. I think if anything, things start to fizzle out after a year or two and a trade's agreed upon. But time will tell. We'll see with Giannis. We'll see with the Milwaukee Bucks. They should be excellent this year. But we're not talking about the East. We're talking about the West, specifically the Southwest. And let's just start with, I mean, honestly, there's a lot of complicated franchises in this group. But let's start with a team that has some newcomers, some guys who are going to be suspended, and some great defensive talent. That's the Memphis Grizzlies. And their over-under win total for next year is 45.5 wins. I am hitting the over button here. Where are you guys at with the Memphis Grizzlies? Keep in mind, Ja Morant, 25-game suspension. I'm not telling you guys that. Of course, I know you guys know that. But
over.
The fans, the listeners might not know that. Steve is with me in the over.
I think it's the easiest over in the entire division, if I'm going to be honest with you. I think it's the easiest over.
I think
Morant's
there's one
out
other
25.
that's easier, but I'm with you. I think it's
Morant's
easy.
out 25, and they get a good guard in Marcus Smart, who's going to be exactly what they need of a defensive guard, where you have a great scorer in Desmond Bane. People forget Jaren Jackson Jr. was not healthy at the start of last year. He's healthy now and playing some of the best basketball he has, especially at the end of last year coming into this offseason. This is a good team. And you talk about their young players. David Roddy played pretty good in spurts. Santi Aldama played a little bit better. Like they got not a bad team. Everyone loves Kenny Lofton Jr. when he had a couple games at the end there. Like they got guys coming off the bench with a very nice team. Obviously, you have Derrick Rose, who's, you know, a little past his prime, but, you know, he's there as well. Got to mention Derrick Rose. We can't talk about a team without mentioning Derrick Rose. But I think this is a good team. I think this is a better, more balanced team than last year. And I also think, too, this is kind of a I don't want to say last chance for Ja, but it's like it's pretty much his last chance where 25 games are up. It's either Ja's career is going to be over because he's just going to keep having off-court distractions and getting in trouble, or he's going to come back after these 25 games and play like an MVP for a very, very good basketball team. I think this team is going to be one of the best defensive and offensive teams in the league. I think they could be top 10, potentially top 5 in both aspects of the game. So I love the Grizzlies, and I don't get to how we had everything that happened with Ja last year. They had 51 wins, and then the line comes out at 45 and a half. I don't get it. I don't get it. Just give me the over. I don't care.
Jake,
I'll fade you both. I don't care. There's no way I'm taking a team in turmoil to win over 46 games. I'm sorry. This division's better. This division's better too. So I'll take them at 45. Better. I'm not saying they're going to be bad, but I think they're a 44, 45 win team. I like the line right where it is. I can't see it. I know that they were better last year. I know the record they had without Ja last year. I know that he's going to come back, and I'm sure he's going to be excellent when they come back. I just don't think I don't think that they've got a handle on whatever the hell was going on there yet this year. At least they have, like, there's clearly some deeper issues going on. So I don't really trust the infrastructure of the other teams that I'm going to pick probably to go over to kind of compensate for this in this division. But hey, we got to take some swings somewhere. I'll take the under on this one, but I wouldn't be surprised if they go over. This is still going to be a solid team. And all they have to do is make the playoffs. If they're healthy and they make the playoffs, no team in the West is going to want to see them in a playoff round. So
agreed.
Still a really good squad, but I'll take the slight under.
Yeah, so I think I'm in the middle of both of you. I do think if I were to make a bet on their win total, I would take the over here. I'm not as emphatic that I think it's going to smash as Steve. And, I don't have as many worries about the off-court situations with Ja and whoever else on this team. I think it's obviously a worry, but I think that's part of the reason you bring in a guy like Marcus Smart. I don't think there's a young point guard in the league who wouldn't want to have Marcus Smart as their mentor. And I think he's a no-nonsense guy, and he came into the Celtics organization with that, and he left with it. And he's probably, I think from the day he got the call, was like probably excited to take Ja Morant under his wing. So I think, Celtics bias, I think Marcus Smart might be able to fix Ja in that sense. And if not, I think Marcus Smart's going to be a great replacement for him when he does miss those 25 games. So I'm excited. I think the roster hopefully is better. I think they'll be a bit healthier. I know Steven Adams missed a lot of time last year. Jaren Jackson always misses time.
Brandon Clark missed time too. All the big guys missed time last year.
I think they have a good mix of young and veterans, young talent and veterans on this team. So I like Memphis to hit this over, and that we can move right along here to most likely to win MVP from this team. I don't think anyone could win MVP from this team if I'm being truthful. So I'm just going to say Marcus Smart just to be fun. I think Ja probably would have the best chance, but I think with him missing the 25 games, right, I don't think that's possible. So yeah, I'm going Smart.
Yeah, I'm kind of right with you, right? It's hard to pick Ja when he's going to miss 25 games guaranteed, and we don't know after that what's going to happen. I'm going Jaren Jackson. I think he was the best defensive player, one of the best defensive players in the league, and we saw him slowly start to improve his offense. I don't think he has a chance to win MVP from this team, but if there's a chance to be the Grizzlies MVP this year, it's Jaren Jackson. I mean, I think he can take that step off offensively. Like we said, they're a little healthier now in the front court, which is going to help Jackson too. And I think if they play small, he's going to be the 5, right? If they play big, he can be almost like a stretch forward. I like Jaren Jackson here. I think he's in for a really big year.
It could be Ja if they start off slow and he comes back and then he just tears it up and brings them to it. That's really the only thing. I think they're going to be fine. I think they're going to be about 500 though. There's no possible MVP, league MVP. Right. I think both your cases for JJJ and Yeah, Grizzlies MVP are good. I'm going to go with an off the board pick here and go with Zaire Williams, because if that dude turns into something, and he's shown flashes, but if he turns into an actual something, then they really don't have to worry. And this team's going to be a lot stronger. There's not a lot of other like surprise spots you can look for from like a guy who could pop this year and like take some load off of Bane and whatever Marcus Smart's going to have to do scoring the ball and everything else. So just that's an interesting one. This roster, when you still look at it, I mean, they're just going to be a pain in the ass to play no matter what. with or without Ja, they're going to be a pain in the ass. So I think a lot of people could be the MVPs. I think this is just going to be each night somebody else is going to be stepping up for them.
Yep.
Yeah. So next, I think, would be most likely to be traded here. Mine's Desmond Bane, and that's just because for whatever reason, I didn't really understand it at the time. His name was floated a bit in trade rumors at the deadline last year. I remember when Grizzlies fans thought they were getting Jaylen Brown, his name was a big part of the package that they would put together to send to Boston. And I think Desmond Bane is just such a rarity in the NBA, but also a type of player that every team wants on their squad, where he's very strong, can defend on the wing, and he's also can just be a scoring machine on any given night, even when Ja Morant is playing alongside him. So I think, more so other teams' interests in Desmond Bane would make him the most likely to be traded, other than Memphis actually wanting to get rid of him.
Yeah, I get that. I went with David Roddy, but you could just exchange it for David Roddy, Santi Aldama, Zaire Williams, any of their like 22, 21-year-olds with potential. Because the fact of the matter is, I think this Grizzlies team is a win-now team. I know I'm very high on them, but I love their starting lineup, and I love their depth, and they have a potential superstar returning in 25 games. So when I think of most likely to be traded, I don't think this team would even blow it up, even if they do start bad without Ja, because they're young. They're still a super young team. The core's still young outside of Marcus Smart. The only reason I say David Roddy is because maybe there's an odd man out. Maybe it gets a little cluttered at the guard position, or, they have a couple other guys who have stepped up because they got, I think, Josh Christopher too. And it's like, you know what?
Yeah, they do.
We're just going to take someone who played a little bit pretty good last year. He's on a rookie deal, and we're going to trade him to bring in a vet to help this team for the playoff run. So that's why I have Roddy. But like I said, you could exchange it with any of those guys there, because like I said, I think the Grizzlies have a lot of depth with good young role players.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that I don't know if there's going to be a move that they look to make this year. I think they're going to want to see their team once Ja comes back. But I'm with Dunny. I think it's Bane, if anything. I think it's trade to maybe get another star if there's an opportunity for them. Like make a send now move. If you
Do you not think Bane can become a star though? Do you think the Grizzlies could? Because especially without Ja, Smart is not going to be that guy who's going to dominate all the offense.
He could. I don't know how much I like Bane yet. For I don't know. I want to see. I'm really interested in the Grizzlies for this 25 games, because I think we're going to learn a lot about, especially Desmond Bane and especially Jaren Jackson Jr., because these are two guys I still have a lot of questions about. I mean, even Jaren Jackson Jr. gave me more questions after what we saw from Team USA, like just being in that kind of competitive environment. The Anthony Edwards chirp, getting out rebounded. He's really the only big body. So he's going to have a lot of haters coming into the year too. How does he respond? Bane, like you're saying, if he has that superstar ability, he's going to want to try to show it. He's going to definitely be their number one option. So we're going to learn a lot. I think he could do it, but also if there's a chance to, for them to trade for, I don't even know. I don't know who an example of this would be at this point. But if there's somebody, a wing or somebody else that they think they could, maximize a window with Ja, and Ja is behaving and they feel good about it, they might feel more urgency because of it. So
I don't think Bane could be a star. I honestly, and this might be harsh. I think I've seen enough with Bane. I think he's a very good player. I think any team would be lucky to have him. I think I've just seen enough where I don't, especially without Ja on the court too. I don't think he's a guy who can lead a team. I think he's very gifted offensively. I think he's very strong on the wing on both sides of the ball. But I just nothing stood out to me where I'm like, if this guy was alone on like a 20-win team, he would be this, amazing talent where he could average close to 30, and be a playmaker as well. That just doesn't. I don't see that in the range of outcomes for Desmond Bane. I think he's a fantastic scorer, though.
Agreed. I think we'll learn a lot with 25 games with Marcus Smart because I think that's going to be the best, like without having Ja, to help Desmond Bane take the step if he can.
I think he could certainly be better this year than he's been for sure. Star, I don't think I could put him into that category. I'll go quick here with best and worst case for Memphis this year. Best case, Smart and Jaren Jackson Jr. are both all defensive first team players, which I think is possible and would just, especially in the absence of Ja to start the season, if both these guys are just defensive forces, which they've both been in the past, and they somehow are in sync and can both be vocal leaders for this group while Ja misses time, I think that would be incredible. Worst case scenario for this team, it's right there. It's so obvious. Ja makes another off-court mistake, and his career with the Grizzlies is done, and maybe even his NBA career, depending on the severity and how hard Adam Silver wants to crack down on him.
Yeah, I'm kind of similar with you. Best case scenario to me, you guys could call me crazy, but this is an NBA Finals team. I think best case scenario, Jay, you have the defense with Smart and JJ. Ja Morant comes back, plays like an MVP. You have that. Desmond Bane, great secondary scorer there. And then, like I said, I think they have probably one of the deeper, youngest, fastest benches in the entire league. And these guys start to play like how they've shown flashes of Roddy, Williams, Kenny, all these guys. So I'm gonna say that's the best case scenario. We could see the Grizzlies representing the West in the NBA Finals, and then worst case scenario, Ja has another Instagram live video with a gun, and he's not playing basketball for the Memphis Grizzlies anymore. And Marcus Smart just doesn't really bring anything offensively. JJ doesn't really take a step, and Desmond Bane doesn't take that leap, and they're like, we got to trade him. That's really all it is. I mean, kind of like you. It all relies on Ja for worst case scenario. Just stay out of trouble. We know you're good at basketball, so just be good at the other thing. That's it.
Yeah.
You took the words out of my mouth, Steve. I think that they could be NBA champions or they could blow it all up. Yeah. I have no idea. That's why they are, if not top 5, the most interesting team of the whole season. Because there are so many ways this could go.
I kind of mentioned it at the top, but I feel like this whole Southwest division is filled with question mark teams, but also part of the question mark is excitement. Like, I think there's a lot of exciting teams in this division, and a lot of teams that, like, if they went either way, you shouldn't be surprised. And that is a great segue for our next team, because the Pelicans, I have no idea about this group. It's really hard for me to get a grasp or a feeling about how I feel about the New Orleans Pelicans. Their over-under win total for next season is 43.5, and I'm taking the under there. I don't know where you guys feel about the Pelicans, but I just think they had so much promise last year. I was so bought in. I think as long as they roster Zion, and as long as he doesn't show me that he's on the court and keeps having these, obviously not nearly as bad as the drama that Ja has off the court, but he's got some of his own drama off the court as well, and that's the most I've heard about him, and it's not basketball related. It's tough for me to get behind this squad. So I'll take the under there. I think the West will be as competitive, if not more competitive, than they were last year. So I just like the under.
I hate agreeing with you, Donnie, but I'm probably going to agree with you. Before we get into this, I think they had 42 wins last year. FanDuel is criminals, all right? FanDuel, you are a bunch of crooks. Last year, I was putting in all my win totals, and in every single one, the top is the over, the bottom is the under. And if we recall at this point last year, no team had more hype than the New Orleans Pelicans. Everybody Everybody was taking the Pelicans over. It was stupid. Everyone was hitting the over. Well, guess what, FanDuel? You swapped it. They had the only team in the NBA where it was swapped, where the over was under the under. So you're blindly putting in all your win totals. I put in the Pelicans under by mistake. And guess what? It cashed because FanDuel's a bunch of crooks and they couldn't get away with it because the under still hits, because Zion can't stay on the court because the team chemistry is terrible. And I'm taking the under because of that reason. I don't think we're going to get a full season of Zion. I don't think the chemistry's good. I don't think they like each other. I'm going to be honest. I just don't think a lot of the guys of the team like Zion. And if that's the case, I can't really buy into that team, especially where I think almost every other team in the division improved. And then the last thing I'll say, because I've been on these two players as just darlings since they came into the NBA, Trey Murphy's out 10 to 12 weeks.
Yep.
Trey Murphy is a huge critical piece for this team. He can stretch the floor. He can shoot. He can play defense. That's a big loss. That's especially a big loss when Zion was out. He was the guy who's like, if we want to play small, I can fit in at the 4 for Zion. Now you don't have that. Now you're relying on a guy. And I think your two best stars, Brandon Ingram and Zion, just don't like each other. So I'm going to fade the Pelicans this year, take the under, and I'm going to double check FanDuel when I put that win total in to make sure these crooks didn't swap it again.
That's crazy. I did not know that.
Only team last year, dude. I'm going through it. I go, why did I take the Pelicans under? Sure enough, FanDuel had to swap it. Get out of here.
Oh man, that's
come on,
crazy.
FanDuel. Be better.
I'm taking the slate over. Everything you guys said is true. And yet I'm taking, this is a bet on Brandon Ingram. I don't care if Zion gets traded or not. I think they can win. I love this line. First of all, I feel like they're a 43-39 team, honestly. So I think they're
right at the number. Yeah.
I know. So I'm like, if they can win one more game, and if I think the Grizzlies are going to lose like 2 less games than that, like that's really like a thin margin I'm going with, but I'll take them there. If Zion, it's really like the potential of Zion. I know that it's ridiculous to even think about it at this point, to trust it at any point. But if they are on the court for 70% of the season, this team, like they have looked like one of the best teams in the Western Conference at multiple times over the past year. I mean, we know how they started off the season, starting off hot when everybody was healthy. I think Ingram might still have another level. I know Herb has another level to go. I love this team. I really do. I don't know about the chemistry, like you said. Who fucking knows where Zion's head is anywhere at? But I think maybe they could still win 44 games. I don't feel good about Memphis or New Orleans at all. Like there's so many unknowns. These are like 2 of the totals that I've looked at that I'm just throwing shit at the wall. Like we'll see what happens here.
The only other thing I want to bring up too that I don't think anyone really talks about because no one talks about this guy, but Jonas Valanciunas is 31. He's starting to get to that age now where we may not see a full season off him. Health, fatigue, and I'll tell you what, if Zion's out and Jonas is out, it is not looking good in the front court after those two. So that's the only other one too, like because no one ever talks about that guy. He just kind of shows up and does what he does every night, but 31 now, he's starting to get up there. Yeah, he did. He's a good player. He's another guy no one talks about. He's just a good player.
He's
no
very
Cody
good.
Zeller love, no Larry Nance Jr. love.
Oh God, ridiculous. Cody Zeller and Love should never be in the same sentence. That should never be in the same sentence. Cody Zeller and Love. Love to see him sit on the bench. That's about the only sentence with love for Cody Zeller.
I'm sure the Pelicans would like to do that too if they could.
They don't want to play him.
Yeah, MVP and most likely to be traded. I'll give them to you guys as a package because they're the 2 best players. MVP, I mean, it's Brandon Ingram. This guy is – I saw something the other day, and I think this is a little out of touch because I don't think he's close to the player that Tatum is. But it is kind of crazy how good Brandon Ingram is and how – how close he is in age to Tatum, and everyone's like, oh, Tatum's still so young and he's a rising star. But then like Brandon Ingram doesn't get that same love. He's like half a year older than Tatum, and people are like, oh, Ingram's already in his prime or already missed his prime. And here he is, 26 years old, and he's still getting better every season. So easy answer for MVP for me is Brandon Ingram. Most likely to be traded, probably just as easy, if not easier, of an answer is Zion, right?
Yep.
Steve mentioned it. There's probably some, it's becoming a locker room cancer at this point. How little he's played. We've heard it from a few. We've heard, rumors from a few players being upset about this. And then just, how patient can the franchise be with a guy like this who they spent huge capital on? They've tried time and time again to get him back on the court. He says he's not ready. He gets mad at the organization. It's a whole thing. He doesn't end up playing, and they miss the mark year after year. And it's a guy who has a name and talent that shittier teams in the league are willing to take a risk on. So I think Zion's the easy, most likely to be traded.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Brandon Ingram, you brought up Jason Tatum. I don't think these guys play similar styles, but Brandon Ingram's like Pascal Siakam to me in the West, where it's just a guy who can do a little bit of everything that is just super overlooked, super underrated. And he's someone that guys know how much I love Pascal. It's Brandon Ingram's one of those guys, right, where you have to watch him play basketball. Like sometimes box scores, you're like, oh, he played a good game, but it doesn't do it justice until you watch his game. And that's kind of why I fell in love with Pascal. I started watching more Raptors games and watching him play and be like, oh, he can run the offense if he needs to. Oh, he can create his own shot. Oh, he can go to the rim. That's Brandon Ingram. Brandon Ingram can do all of that. So it'll be interesting. Even if Zion is traded or is no longer there, I would love to see a full season of Brandon Ingram being the guy. And most likely be traded is obvious sign. I'm not going to repeat anything you said because you made good points. Zion's going to the New York Knicks because they're desperate and they're willing to take on his 10 million pounds of baggage.
Jake?
You're muted, Jake.
I got nothing to add to that. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Ingram has to be the MVP. Zion, he might be out the door before the season starts. Who knows? Like, it could be any moment. I feel like it could be now, it could be never. Best case scenario for this team is Zion's healthy.
Yeah.
And they make the conference finals, right? Like, that's best case.
Yeah.
Worst case,
they play well together. Yeah.
Like, it's the same as before. I feel like
we like this team.
Ceiling. Yeah.
We like this roster. Like, it's a fun roster. It's pretty much the same roster as last year. We like this team. We love their role players. They just got to all play together. We haven't seen them play together for more than, a 2-week stretch?
Feels
yeah. Like I think the best and worst case scenario we probably all have. We don't like to put injuries in this, but best and worst case is everyone's healthy for this team, including Trey Murphy is just as good when he comes back.
Yeah.
Zion's healthy for the full year. And worst case is, Ingram doesn't progress and people aren't healthy.
And I think Zion becomes a locker room cancer, right? Where it's like really vocal of, oh, they don't want to play with Zion. He's checked out on this team mentally. That's worst case.
Sure.
And last little nugget, I think CJ McCollum is one of the guys who's rumored to be growing frustrated, and you don't blame him. He's, you talk about Valanciunas being 31 years old. McCollum's 31. He came here thinking, this is his time after leaving Dame Lillard, and he gets a new beginning with a couple of young rising superstars, and stuff hasn't panned out for him. And McCollum hasn't played bad since he's been in New Orleans. So, if anyone's growing frustrated, it's probably one of your better players on the roster. You probably want to be able to button these things up and make it work. Who knows if that's going to be the case for the Pelicans, but that is the New Orleans Pelicans. Me and Steve both under here. Jake has the over for the win total. And we're moving right along to the Dallas Mavericks, another very interesting team. More troubled stars on a roster. Or I should say star. Luka is not troubled. We're talking about Kyrie here.
He's a sweet little innocent boy, all right? He's just really good at basketball.
The over-under of win totals for the Dallas Mavericks is 45.5. I don't like saying this, but I'm taking the over here. I think Luka takes another step, which is very hard for even me to believe. And I think as long as they keep Kyrie on the team and he doesn't shoot himself in the foot, I think they can find things that work. I also think that they low key improved their roster in a very good way this offseason, and it may be even flying under the radar about how much they improved. But I like the over for this team. They have the star power, and I do think they took some steps in the right direction this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to take the over. I really don't, but I probably
Yes, you
have
do.
to. I really don't want to. But because I know, like I feel like this is a 42 win team. I really do feel like it's a 500 win. But I will take the over. I guess I'll go glass half full approach here. I think they had two really, really good picks in the draft for what they needed with Omax and Derek Lively. I really do. They re-signed someone to start at center that we're not going to talk about at all. I'm not going to mention his name, but hopefully, if all goes well, Lively will be the starting center sooner rather than later for this team. And I think he's going to be great for them because he's going to give them exactly what they need as a defender and a rebounder down there. We'll see. The offense has a long way to go. He didn't score very much at all at Duke. That was never really what he was hyped up about when he was a top prospect. So for everything else, it's like, all right, we got a full season of Luka and Kyrie. Let's see. Like when they're on the court together, that's one of the best duos in the NBA. You can't argue that. And they have a whole off season to play together to maybe have the chemistry be a little better, not the, pass back and forth 45 times because neither wants to take the last shot because they're trying not to be the selfish ball hog. But they got the talent. They do. They have the talent. They have the young players I like. I really liked the draft. I don't think these guys are either going to play, but I loved Mike Miles and Jelly Walker from for the unsigned free agents. I thought those were two great additions. I don't know if they'll play much, but I like the direction they're going with the guys they're bringing in. Grant Williams should help this team a little bit too. I think Grant Williams is the kind of type of player they need coming off the bench, type of player they'll need if they want to play small, who has experience, who can give you defense, give you offense. He can actually shoot a three, not like, I'm not going to mention his name. But I got to take the over. I don't like it. I don't want to because still there's a part of this team that rubs me the wrong way. But I'll take the over. Just go 42 and 42, 40. I don't know.
I'll gladly take the over because there's no way Luka can have as tumultuous of a year as he did last year, right?
True.
He has to bounce back. He was in MVP conversations going into last year, and
Yes.
no one's putting him in those. I mean, maybe it doesn't feel like he's getting that same amount of excitement this year, and I feel like he's a guy that is going to bounce back. I would be very hard pressed for me to think he has 2 poor years in a row. The Kyrie thing, I mean, who knows? We'll see how it goes. But if they're on the court together, Grant is a great addition, like you mentioned. This team is better than it looks better on paper than they did last year. I think they have a bounce back year. I think they could win 47-48 and be a 4 seed again, 3 seed again in the West. Really do.
I hope you're right. And it's funny too, because we say poor year for Luka, you had 32, 8, and 8. Like that's the
exactly.
like level he gets to. It's like, oh, Luka had a down year. He was 32, 8, and 8. His shooting splits weren't the best, but it's just hilarious. It's like, yeah,
Exactly.
Luka played great. He went 32, 8, and 8.
It's all relative, right?
Exactly.
Compared to what we've seen him do, for sure.
I agree.
And there's still another level, like you said, Duddy. There's another level there. There is. Like, it's
which
probably
is scary.
related to what you're saying too, is the efficiency. Like, and especially if he becomes like an elite shooter, like there's so many different things that he can improve on that I feel like he is going to still in his career.
And I know Kyrie can be, distraction diva, whatever you want to call him. I think having a full off season together is going to help immensely for Luka and Kyrie's chemistry this year.
That's part of the reason why I would take the over too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just
you just
getting
never
that
know,
camaraderie,
right?
getting that chemistry.
You just never know.
Yeah. It's something we do know about is that Luka would be our MVP pick for this team. That's obvious. My most likely to be traded would be Kyrie. 2 simple reasons. Kyrie has requested trades on multiple teams and has been the reason for teams getting blown up. And the second reason is Mark Cuban is a very proactive owner. And I think if he realizes that bringing in Kyrie was a mistake, and Kyrie asks him directly for a trade. I don't think Mark Cuban's the type of owner that would hesitate to do so. So both things are pretty easy for me. MVP Luka, most likely to be traded. Kyrie, who has asked for trades in the past.
Yeah, I agree with you. I will bring up for traded. I said Tim Hardaway Jr. as well, because if you look at Tim Hardaway Jr., there's a number of different avenues where he could be traded, right? If the Mavs are bad and they need to, kind of blow it up, and Kyrie's maybe traded, or Kyrie doesn't want to play, it's checked out. Tim Hardaway's a guy where it's like you could still get a little something back for him, right? This is a guy that playoff teams would probably want if they're going for something. I know he's 31, but he can give you some points, whether you play him off the bench or whether he's like that fifth starter you have. Tim Hardaway, you can trade him that way, and also vice versa. If the Mavs are like, oh, we got a good team this year, we're going, but Tim Hardaway kind of feels like that odd man out, which it could happen if the team goes the direction they want it, then you could trade him for something else you need. Maybe, a piece coming off the bench, maybe a pick down the road, whatever it is. I'd put Tim Hardaway up there too, because I think regardless if the Mavs are good or if they're bad, there's a situation where he could be dealt in both of those scenarios.
Yeah, I don't hate that. Jake, what do you got?
I mean, it's Kyrie to the Lakers is still the trade that it's going to happen at some point.
Yeah.
I don't think Kyrie makes it through the year, if I'm being real. I'll take the over because I think Luka can get the over. I don't think Kyrie makes it through the year. If it's the Lakers or somewhere else. He got his money.
The over, and they're like, get the second best player out of here. That's the Mavs season. That's why I don't want to take this over. I know he got his money. I know he got his money. Kyrie's going to get traded in November, and Dwight Powell's going to start 82 games. I'll be absolutely miserable. That's the Mavs season in a nutshell.
I can't bet. I can't. I still think Luke. I think that it will be a good thing. I think they'll notice it early, or he's just going to ask for it early. I mean, to get rid of it will be a good thing.
Possibilities are endless for this Mavs team. I think you guys just got a glimpse of what Steve's worst case is that Dwight Powell starts every game.
Yeah.
That is
I don't even care record aside. It could goes 81-1 if Dwight Powell starts 82 games. I'm still going to be upset. Should not be starting on an NBA
which team. You should be. I think if if they're smart over there, Grant Williams will take a lot of those minutes from Dwight Powell, which you already kind of mentioned. I think that will start to happen. Kyrie causes issues. I think this team is also kind of the same thing, right? Best case, Luka and Kyrie work their magic together and they don't pass the ball back and forth like a hot potato when the shot clock or the game clock expires and lose games like they did last year. No, they play as a unit and as two of the best offensive players this game has ever seen, and they become great and the Mavericks become great. And worst case, like Steve said, Dwight Powell starts every game.
Absolutely.
Jake,
worst case.
Anything to add there? Or I assume our best case is all pretty similar. I think.
How far do you think that this Mavs team could go if Kyrie's checked in the whole year? Because I'll be a little biased if I have to say it. But if Kyrie's checked in the whole year, the rookies, Omax and Lively play like how they've been hyped up of the roles they can have. Where's this team going? Because I still don't think it's that deep of a team.
A conference finals again, like a couple years ago.
All right,
and they beat the Suns in the playoffs, so we get a Luka overbook and he gets to celebrate that. That's the best case.
If they beat this Suns team, I'll be through the
and then they get smacked by the Nuggets. That's the best case scenario. Because Dwight Powell guarding Jokic is
If Dwight Powell's guarding Jokic, I'm not watching that playoff series. I'm just not watching it. If that's the five they roll out there, I'm not watching that playoff series. Meerkat would incinerate me.
Yes, he would. Yes, he would.
Chance.
Yeah, I as good as Luka and Kyrie both are, and if they came together and were able to put it all together, I think that's great. I still think conference finals. I think they're a move away from me being able to put them in the finals conversation if everything works out perfectly for them. But I just took a look at their roster, and their depth it is pretty bad. I think they did make some roster improvements, but that doesn't mean that their depth got better. And I think conference finals is as far as I'll go, which is pretty generous to say.
I hate using it as a crutch, right? But 1 or 2 injuries. This is a lot of teams in the NBA could handle 1 or 2 injuries. The Mavs can't. The Mavs cannot handle 1 or 2 injuries, and that's a big red flag. Last thing I'll say, mortgage the future and somehow try to throw Dwight Powell in there to get Pascal Siakam, and we have a totally different conversation come playoffs.
There you go.
Raptors are blowing it up, Mavs. Go do what you didn't do at the deadline.
Steve just fixed the Mavericks.
Oh, yeah. I've been doing that in way too many 2K seasons, Sims, boys. Trade finder, instant Pascal Siakam. What's it going to take?
Yeah, we might have to get Mark Cuban on the pod to talk details with Steve here how to fix the Mavericks. 2 teams left, Rockets and Spurs. We'll start with the Rockets. The over and under on this team's win total is 31.5. And this was actually the easiest one for me, guys. I'm over here. I'm over all the way here. And I say that confidently because 31.5 games is not a hard mark to hit.
Yeah. What they had 22 last year, though?
They had 22 last year. They had a couple of big additions. And I think the most notable is actually their head coach, who I know very well, and he went to the NBA Finals his first year as a head coach. I think he should be able to accomplish 31.5 wins with the young talent he has, with the addition of a real point guard in Fred VanVleet, and with the addition of he's not the same caliber player as Marcus Smart, but he is the same kind of pest, annoying defender in Dylan Brooks. Ime Udoka has his dog on a leash that he can unleash anytime he wants in Dylan Brooks. I think this is a perfect mold of a team for a coach like Ime Udoka, and I see them passing this 31.5 mark.
I'm right there with you, Donnie. I'm right there with you. I think it's a huge coaching upgrade. However you feel about Udoka is one thing, but he's a good NBA coach, and he's going to get the best out of his players. And what have we been saying about the Rockets for 2-3 years now? It's a fun team. It looks like a great team on paper, but you might as well put 5 folding lawn chairs out to play defense with this team. And I don't think that's going to fly with Udoka. Also, the thing I'll say too is this is still one of the youngest teams in the NBA that these guys are getting better. We saw the difference in Jabari Smith from the first half of the season to the second half. Sengun, I hate saying this phrase, but he's basically a poor man's Jokic. He can basically do everything like that. Obviously not to the extent that Jokic can because he's the go-to, but that's what he can do. I thought the Rockets won the draft this year. I thought the Rockets won the draft. Amen Thompson, and then you still get Cam Whitmore, who people thought they were going to take when they took Amen Thompson, and then you wait, 15 picks later, and you take Cam Whitmore? This is a great team, and I really, really like the addition of Fred VanVleet because, like you said, it gives them some stability at the most important position on the court, the point guard. So I really like this Rockets team. I think they're going to be a fun team. Dylan Brooks, too. I think this is a great spot for him because that's what the Rockets needed, right? They needed a guy like that, a dog, a guy who's going to be physical, get in the face of maybe under the skin of the other opponents. I think that's what the Rockets need. And also a locker room leader, which he could be for this team. Because you know what? The problem with Memphis, there are too many dogs barking at one another to be the leader of that team. In Houston, we don't really know who that guy is. Maybe Dylan Brooks is kind of that spark that's going to help this team. I like the over here. I've been high on the Rockets for the past couple of years, so it's no surprise here. Jabari Smith, one of my favorite rookies from a year ago. I think this team is going to be pretty good this year. Maybe I think they're closer to 40 wins than they are 31. I really do. I think this is a team that could, flirt with play-in territory because maybe they still got a year to go, but this is an exciting team with a ton of talent, and we didn't even name the most talented guy probably on the roster, Jalen Green, who could drop 40 any night, it feels like. He's just got to be more consistent. This team's sky's the limit, and I'll tell you what, if they can keep the core together, sky's the limit for not just, this year, but going forward. I think this team's only just going to keep going up.
You guys put it perfectly. I think we're all aligned here. I'm on the over too, and it's an Ime thing because I think he's an awesome coach and going to come in and, like you said, instill a defensive identity and just an identity at all with this team. And they're really going to weed out like who matters and who's there. And I can't pick a Jeff Green team to go under. So
that's right. I forgot they got him too. That's a great addition for a team like this.
It really is. MVP for you guys. I see Steve in the dock has his guy, Jabari Smith Jr.
Yeah, I think he takes a step up this year. I think we saw kind of signs of it towards the end of last year, and Jabari Smith was one of my favorite prospects in the draft class a year ago. I think he's got the physical tools, right? He's 6'11". He's got a wingspan that's bigger than pretty much almost everyone else in the NBA, and he plays very good defense, and he can shoot. He can shoot. He shot the ball well at Auburn. It's a matter of creating your own shot, getting more comfortable at the NBA level. And I think this is a good spot for him because Jabari Smith is surrounded by guys that are going to handle the ball. He doesn't need to do any really ball handling. It's more like, all right, just go pick your spots, find your shot, and be, a big man, kind of a hybrid big man. I think it's Jabari Smith. Honorable mention, Alperen Sengun, because that guy is so underrated. He's so underrated. No one gives him credit.
Mm-hmm. Jake, who you got?
I'm excited about Sengun this year too, but I'll give it to Fred VanVleet because I think like you mentioned it right at the top, Dunny. He's going to be a really steadying presence. He's going to be able to put up huge scoring games, but also just they got an actual point guard in there. So give me Freddie. It also lines up with my most likely to be traded to because you mentioned the guy who might be the most talented on this team, but he's the guy who's going to have to buy in the most, I feel like, too. So Jalen Green is my most likely to be traded because he can get a big package back. He's got a lot of talent. And I mean, if system, I feel like they kind of drafted his replacement in Amen. Like if they really feel like, and I think they can play together too. Don't get me wrong, but this is a new regime in here. So then that's a guy from the old one, and there's definitely teams who would be really interested in him. But I think it'll still work out. Don't get me wrong. I think he seems like the type of guy who's willing to grow and evolve and everything. So I'm excited to see what he does. But it's got to be the most likely just because of the timeline.
Yeah, so my MVP, I'm with Steve in that I think I don't think anyone on the Houston Rockets is winning the league MVP.
No,
I think if anyone in that conversation for league MVP, Jabari Smith would probably be the closest. I think team MVP is going to be Jalen Green.
Okay.
I think with them having a legit roster now, having a legit coach who gets the best out of their players, which all three of us agreed on that. I remember even the first summer when Ime came to the Celtics, there's all these reports about him taking JB and JT to the side and being like, look, you guys are it. You guys are two of the best forwards or wing players in the league. Go get what's yours. Go be the best version of yourselves. And they did that. I have a feeling he's going to have a similar conversation with Jalen Green and Jabari Smith Jr. I think Jalen Green just easier when you're a ball dominant guard like he is and you have the ball in your hands most of the time. And I think he took an incredible leap last year. I mean, averaging 22 points per game, shooting just about 34% from three. I think that 3-point number could go up. And I just love how athletic and how much of a scorer Jalen Green is. So I could see him being the team MVP. Most likely to be traded. I know we talked about it to get it out of the way at the top, but there has been some news developing since we've been on the pod. And
Shams,
this is
right?
Yeah, this is interesting. So the Rockets are looking to trade Kevin Porter Jr. along with draft compensation. This is a Shams report. So if you're listening live and you didn't hear, you can go back to the beginning. KPJ has some off-court trouble. He's a bad dude. And it was reported a few days ago that he was no longer part of the Rockets team. However, now we're getting reports that the Rockets are actively trying to trade him. This is a quote from a article in The Athletic. Those sources say the Rockets have contacted multiple teams offering draft compensation as incentive to receive Porter. In deal scenarios using Porter's contract, the Rockets would be using his salary to target a player under contract who can play immediately and help the team, league sources said. So this is just a very weird thing that's happening. It seems almost wrong that the Rockets would even try to do this, but that at the end of the day, it is a business. So if they can kill two birds with one stone and get rid of this guy who they don't want anywhere near their team, and also get something in return to help them immediately, I guess I understand that. But for that reason, just because Shams broke the news while we're on, my most likely to be traded will be KPJ. But ideal scenario, he's not even able to be traded, and Adam Silver jumps in here and just boots him from the league, because that should probably be what happens.
Yeah, Shams doing some nasty work for agents right now to push that, and for the Rockets to push that out there. Hopefully Silver steps in there, because that would be kind of crazy.
Right. Yeah. So that's I've said it every team we've gone to throughout this division. There's just very high potential for a lot of these teams, and every team has like this one like oddball scenario that's going on where shit could hit the fan at any moment, and that's obviously the Rockets.
And I want to say with the Rockets too, which is the craziest part, their like core 5 young guys are all 21 or younger.
And
which
they're
is
all
wild.
Already very good.
That's the craziest thing to hear, right? Because we still got so many years for these guys to grow and mature. Jalen Green, 21. Sengun's 21. Jabari's 20. And then the 2 young players they drafted, Cam Whitmore's 19. Amen Thompson's 20. That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Half those guys can't legally drink right now. And they're incredible at basketball. It's just – I think with the Rockets too, there's a lot of hype, a lot of potential, but patience. You got to have patience with this team because they're still young. It's still such a young team.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing too, those 5 young guys you mentioned, none of them really have that many question marks either. Like you just expect these guys to be great going forward, which they probably will be. So that was the Houston Rockets. Our last team now, the San Antonio Spurs, the team that has Victor Wembanyama. The over-under for them is 29.5, and I'm on the Wemby train, so I'm taking the over. 30 wins for the biggest generational talent we've seen since LeBron James, being coached by one of the best coaches in NBA history. I'll take the over, please.
You nailed it right there, Donnie, with the second thing you said, best coach in NBA history, right? Popovich. If Wemby went in a different situation, maybe I'd feel differently. But the only thing I think that prevents this over from hitting is a Wemby injury. And I don't root for injuries. I don't want to see them. I think Popovich's mind with Wemby. And honestly, the players around Wemby are not bad. They had some pretty good rookies last year. Sochan was really nice. Keldon Johnson, I think, is going to emerge, and people don't give enough credit to. I'm taking the over as well. 29.5. They had 22, I think it was last year. Now you get Wemby, and we've been preaching Wemby for feels like 10 years at this point. Wemby should be unbelievable, especially under Pop.
You know how much I love Wemby, but I'm taking the under. I'll take the Peyton Manning year for Wemby in his first year. I think there's going to be some struggles. I think they're going to protect him.
Oh no!
Even less wins because of that. I forgot about that. Not 2 less wins. No, said he could be unlocked. I mean, in San Antonio, it feels like the perfect fit for him. Said he's going to go crazy in a couple of games with Pop, but no, I think that they're going to be close to this total, but I think they're going to take it slower with Wemby. I don't know if he dominates right away, so I'll take like I'll take 26, 27 wins for them, and then next year they're going to win like 45.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely a fair argument. I do think where I agree with Steve, there, guys like Keldon Johnson, I do like. There are some guys that, have some promise on this roster.
For sure.
But for the most part, if Wemby has a slow start, or if Wemby isn't everything he's cracked up to be in year 1, then yes, this team could be very bad. Me smashing the over here is very reliant on Wemby being everything that everyone thinks he's going to be. There's definitely a chance where, this team falls from underneath them and they don't hit that mark. good thing about them is they hit what was it? You said 22 wins
I
last
think it was
year,
22 last year.
and that was
And-
when Popovich told everyone to not bet on them,
Right.
and they still managed 22 wins. So that was kind of my thought process. I'm very in on Wemby. They were able to accomplish that last year when things looked real bad. So yeah, I'm probably the most excited for this team in the division also.
And even though they, only won 22 games, I think it was a good growing season for them where we saw Keldon have to become like the guy. Devin Vassell had took a big step. Malachi Branham and Jeremy Sochan, which I thought were like, all right, they're going to be okay, role players in the NBA, decent picks. They were thrown into larger roles because, like we said, we didn't know what this starting lineup was every single night. This was just a random team at times, but they found themselves to 22 wins. And these are guys now who are going to be part of those role players around Wemby. So I'm glad they got kind of the extra work, the extra reps. I think that's only going to help them this year.
Yeah, I agree. I love Sochan, man. I'm excited to see him play this upcoming season, especially alongside Wemby. Jake, any final words on the Spurs here?
No, I'm excited. I'm really I'm going to be locking into a lot of Spurs games this year because they are, even if they are not very good, they're going to be so fun and so interesting to watch. And like you guys mentioned, Steve Sohan, there's just so many interesting guys on this team that I'm want to see how they develop. I don't know how good they're going to be, but there's a lot of intrigue in Wemby, and it's going to be worth watching just to see that. And especially, I mean, he's going to have a couple of plays a game that are just out of this world, and it's going to be worth seeing for that alone.
Exactly. Yeah, we talked about, we started the show with ticket sales and TV views, and talk about a guy who will do a lot of that for the San Antonio Spurs, Victor Wembanyama. We're all very excited to see him play, and that was the Southwest Division, folks. A lot of teams with a lot of talent and a lot of X factors and crazy situations. I'll leave it at that.
5 exciting teams. Is it fair to say that 5 teams that have excitement at least in some way or another for them? All these teams.
That's definitely fair. A lot of them with big changes too, which is usually a fun thing in the NBA. All right, that was the Southwest Division, folks. For Steve, for Jake, for myself. Follow Trainwreck Sports. Follow at Happy Hour Hoops 1 on all socials. And we're just that much closer to the NBA, guys. We did Atlantic last week. We did Southwest Division today. And I don't know exactly what division we're doing. Jake, do you have anything in mind yet for next week? Or are we just picking a random?
We're doing the Central next week, baby.
Oh,
it's time.
And we're doing the Central Division next week. So that's a little teaser. Make sure you tune in, and we'll see you next time. Later, guys.
Whatever the number is.